Hello, audience. Hope you're fine and it's a good day. And it is nice to see there are many interested audiences have joined today in our webinar. This is a sequel of webinars, and now we are on our third webinar. So this is being presented by Info-OBE with jointly by Bangladesh local chapter at United International University. So I am Professor Dr. Hassan Sarwar, and today I'm going to moderate this session. And this session will be taken by a very eminent expert in outcome-based education practices, and this is Dr. Phong Mac. So let us know a little bit about him. So here, Professor Dr. Phong Mac is a professor at the Electrical and Computer Engineering of Gannon University. He is also a consultant to GE Transportation in Erie since 1994 and helps build real-time simulators for aid in design and development of control schemes for the GE locomotives. He served 14 years as a chair for the ECE department. He published significant research work on outcomes assessment and offered 10 workshops at BAP and ABET symposium and FIE conferences on outcomes assessment and accreditation. With his extensive knowledge and experience in outcomes assessment, he founded Mac Team Software and created Eval Tools, the most comprehensive online assessment tool that covers learning management, outcomes assessment, continuous improvement management, student advising, survey, and institution-wide self-study. With Eval Tools, he successfully led the ECE department of Gannon through 3 ABET accreditation cycles with flying colors in 2005, 2011, and 2017, respectively. In addition, he served as co-chair for the Gannon's Middle State Self-Study Committee from 2010 till 2013 and led the committee through a 2-year preparation effort in writing the self-study report that resulted in Gannon receiving its most successful accreditation record in 2013. Similarly, with Eval Tools, he assisted physics and engineering program of Frostburg State University and computer science and engineering programs of Islamic University of Medina to achieve excellent results in ABET accreditation. He serves as consultant to other schools for their ABET accreditation. In addition, he worked with K-12 schools to create ADAM tools for K-12 school districts to manage their student information from admissions to graduation, as well as special education to handle intervention assistant team, multi-factor evaluation, and individual education program. His most recent work is the creation of a school management system based on 7-pillar principles that allows a district to analyze effectively its management and academic achievement performance. The 7-pillar school management system is currently being used in 18 school districts in Ohio. And so let us welcome Professor Phong Mac to start his session. But before that, I would request all the audiences to please log in into the Vartec, and you will see in the live session, when you click, you will see a live chat. And in this live chat, you can ask your questions or any suggestions, which we'll be recording and which will be taking notes. And in the middle of the talks or after the talks, we will ask those questions to the speaker. So please feel free to write your notes here in the chat box. And also there is a small declaration that all the affiliates of Info-EB, you know that we are approaching the virtual summit of Info-OB 2022. It's coming very soon. So I'd like to declare that all the affiliates of Info-OB will get a free pass, and all the participants of these webinars, you will also get a free pass to attend this virtual summit. So just it's a reminder to all of you, don't forget that to attend this gigantic session. And also those who are now watching it over Vartec, please note that you can see these live sessions later on after logging in into the Vartec system. So you can watch these sessions many times, and you can also download a PD certificate from the Vartec. So that certificate will give a certification that you have joined this webinar session. So I'm concluding here, and thank you all for joining in this session. I would like to request Professor Fong to start his presentation. Professor
Thank
Fong.
you, Professor Sawa, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. I know that all of you are from different parts of the world. And it's honors for me to share my experience on how to automate the assessment evaluation for Criterion purposes. Now, this is the third webinar for the series of webinars we're going to offer. And the first webinar, and the father OBE and Dr. Spatty has spent a great deal of time and talk about the concept of OBE, the principle of OBE, which we'll review briefly later. And the webinar 2 is when offered by Professor Vazit and talk about the OBE, how is that associated with the Criterion processes, the approach, and how to align the OBE method and what challenges we face institutions and fulfill both the accreditation requirements and also what are the national framework for quality improvement and now. So for these sessions, okay, I'm going to talk about brief review and the OBE and how that time to accreditation. Well, these two processes have to be independent, but in reality they are not. I can actually align OBE with accreditations. And what are they in the accreditation elements, and what are the processes that we can engage? And more important thing is at the end of it, we need to figure out how do we automate the entire process. Now, I've been dealing with accreditation for the past 20 years. I can pretty much summarize the entire accreditation process into two major models. One is GR assessment model, one is called the FCAT assessment model. And by far, I believe FCAT assessment model is the one that I can use for automation purposes. Then later on in the presentations, I also show how to achieve automations with a tool set called eval tools that I developed. And by the end of the presentation, hopefully you can walk out with a process and how to begin your work. Now, when it comes to OBE, these are the four major principles. Okay, first is clarity of focus. Okay, so when we teach or when we structure a curriculum, okay, we need a clear picture of the learning for students to exhibit or perform demonstrations. Okay, the clarity of focus. The second principle is expand opportunity. Okay, we need to somehow define or redefine or reorganize our pattern of teaching time. So right now, our teaching curriculum is based on credit hours. So it's a fixed time basis. So, but when it comes to expanding the maximum learning behavior of students, then fixed time basis may not necessarily work, but every student learn at different pace. Okay, and they all can learn if you give enough time and a proper environment. So the question is, how do we impose no limit on how many times the student can reach a given performance level? And those are things that we need to explore. And third would be high expectations. We need to raise the standard of acceptable performance. Okay, and design down is the term they used by Dr. Spatty, and how do you actually approach the OBE methodology by design down, first looking at the end of the significant learning experience and backward and go back into the curriculum and see how to achieve that. Now, there are three types of OBE, okay, and Vazia touched upon this one in the last sessions, the traditional OBE and transitional OBE and the transformational OBE. I believe most of us are at the traditional OBE that's based on the curriculum and try to teach what we think the students are supposed to have. And transitional OBE, we focus more on the high order competency that really reflects the learner's ability to do complex things. Now, transformational OBE will be deal with more context dominated and outcomes are significant in one complex learning. So I don't think we're in the transformational OBE. we are more into we are more at the traditional OBE at this point. If you look at the history, how does it go? And back in 1963, where the school learning and aptitudes was concept presented, and then Bloom came in 1968. Now, Dr. Sperry came in 1978 and talk about the OBE concept, how to expand even further. So we are currently at this point where the Dr. Sperry tried to focus more and talk more about what it means by transformational OBE. But when it comes to OBE implementations, okay, there's a design down concept proposed by Dr. Sperry. But from an engineering perspective, okay, for me, backward design would be a more familiar term to an engineer. Okay, I recently designed 2 programs for Ghana University, the cyber engineering and cybersecurity. And this is the push that I use. Okay, and this book, you may want to take a look at it, is Understanding by Design. Okay, these 2 gentlemen, Grange and Jay, they focus on the entire design process of backward design. The main thing that they point out what I mean by understanding is ability to transfer the learning to new setting and challenges, as opposed to just recording. So then we're looking into how to do this in order to effective the curriculum, assessment, even the instructional design itself. Yeah, all these things here should be gauged based on the student achievement of the design learning. But in general, the backward design, there are 3 components to it. First one is identify the design result first. And then 2, determine what would be the acceptable evidence. And then 3 is to plan the learning experience instructions. That's precisely how I did it for my cyber engineering and cybersecurity program. That we first look into the market need and what are the key skills that the current market are looking for. So those are design results. Now, based on those, we look at entire curriculum. Okay, for 4 years of study, exactly what are the subject matter, the topic area need to be included in the curriculums. After those are defined, then look at individual course itself, how to plan the learning experience and instructions in order to achieve our goal. Okay, so that's the backward design process. Now, this is you can listen and apply the backward design process not only to curriculum design itself, but also to individual course itself. Now, this paper by Richard and Rebecca and spell out the ABC of engineering educations. And in there, he also talked about the Bloom, the ABAT, but more importantly, he found out one thing here. The instructor, most instructors would say that they want the student to master high-level thinking skill. By many cases, the lecture homework focused mostly exclusively on application domain in Bloom. So when it comes to Bloom cognitive domain, okay, it focuses on the knowledge, the comprehensions, the application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluations. Of course, this domain of learning, cognitive domain learning, it can happen in any course or any process. So I start with knowledge first, comprehension, applications. When it comes to applications, we're supposed to focus on whether it can analyze and solve the problem. So that's where most of the problem is. Your most instructor at the end, they say, okay, I want to teach my students to have the critical thinking skill. We want them to be able to design something. We want to be able to evaluate what they've designed. However, when we do teaching, most often time, we give them a problem that has been well-defined and just ask them to solve the problem. When you're doing that, we basically focus on application level, hardly on the analysis, not even on the synthesis and evaluations. So with this in mind, so when it comes to OBE, it's the same thing. OBE basically is a framework that allows you to look into your curriculum design, look into individual course design, and how to best enable and empower the learner so they can maximize the critical thinking. So we are at the very beginning stage of the road and recognizing this phenomena and recognizing that we need to do all this. I'm pretty sure from this point onward, there'll be many creative ideas how to achieve this in every course level or even in the curriculum level, even in our entire education system, supporting system for the curriculum. So we have a credit-based, a fixed time-based graduation for 4 years. Also, we're looking to stack up certification in between in order to achieve the end goal of degrees. And those are things that need to be discussed and explored further. But nonetheless, the key thing is when it comes to OBE, we can focus on what the learner is supposed to learn. They can apply the skill that align with the industry need. Okay, especially now that the industry, we are at the beginning of the fourth industrial revolutions, 4.0. So what are the new skills that are needed in the new workforce area? And it's in particular for pandemic situations, and students also recognizing that we don't need to go on campus to learn things. So the learning pedagogy may change, and the teaching philosophy may also change. So how do we as institutions adapt to it? Okay, those are things we need to explore further. Okay, so with this said, okay, so assuming that, so now that we have the OB teaching and learning strategy all in place, assuming that is done. But once you have those things done, we still address our next questions. What to do with the assessments? How do we know that the things that we've done are in place for OBE, okay, really allow to achieve what we really want to achieve? Okay, so that deal with the question of assessment. Now, in this talk, okay, I'm going to walk through the curriculum mapping as a step one. No matter how you design your curriculum, we always start with curriculum mapping itself. But mapping to what? It's mapping to your student outcome. Okay, so when it comes to learning process for any programs, okay, we're looking at the program education objective. This very high level of objective that you want every student to graduate to achieve the target. Now, with that, underneath that PEO, you have the student outcome. Okay, student outcome depends on what accreditation body go after. If you're going after ABAT, then they have a well-defined student outcome that's mandated. So these are student outcome that's they're getting input from all the professional organizations, and saying these are the student skill set as the outcome they're looking for in the industry. So that's basically what we try to get to. But when it comes to student outcome, okay, so when you design a curriculum, the next question is, when you design a curriculum, how do you map your curriculum at different level, first year, second year, third year, and fourth year, to all the student outcome that you try to achieve? Now, for this process, now what does it mean? In this case, we adopt the FCAR methodology. Now, FCAR is Faculty Cost Assessment Report. It was first proposed by John Astor, and it's a father of FCAR, and back in year 2001. So when I first looked into this process, I realized that this process most likely is only one that allows me to automate the entire process. But it's very systematic. Okay, it's rubric based and can be applied to every course level and even applied to the entire curriculum. It's very systematically allowed me to collect data. So that's a process we'll go through it. So with the FCAR implemented on every course level, the next thing is how to roll up the data from a program perspective. The FCAR is implemented at a faculty level, at a course level. But when those data are collected, now how do we roll up to the top? From a program perspective, look into it. That becomes PVT. It's a performance vector table. Then after I have those, then how those data allow me to evaluate further for the PI, and also PI is performance indicator. So and then the corresponding student outcome. Okay, remember we start with the performance PEO, the program execution objective. Next level, student outcome. But student outcome in general is a broad sense of statements, which is quite difficult to assess the student outcome directly. So most often time, each program depends on any mechanic or electrical engineering or biomedical. They have their own mandate of content knowledge that need to be learned for the curriculum. So that's why every program must come up with its own unique set of performance indicator that you can measure by the time student graduated. Okay, so the PI will be a subset in the subset of SO. For each SO, we have another subset of PI performance indicator allowed to assess. So we assess PI first, then SO. Then after that, then how do we create a term sum report? With that, with those data, how do we close the loop, which is action item that we're going to generate? And the question is, and then the action item can come from the course level, can also come from the problem level. Now, how to close the loop for improvement? Okay, so they form a loop, and all this process that we indicated here, curriculum mapping, FCAR, PVT, SO evaluations, the term report, and closing a loop. All these are very time-consuming process. Now, so far in the past, even up to now, okay, the faculty get very frustrated because they spend so much time in preparing courses, teaching, and then they also create a set of assessment, everything else. And on top of that, they need to assess on course. Now they also need to support the program assessment. And so the data collection process is where we complain the most. Now, the first thing we'll address is, can we simplify or automate the data collection process? The next complaint we're going to have, after data collected, they also take a very long time to compile. I also need to compile the data in a sense it's meaningful, allow the faculty to actually sit down and evaluate and quickly identify what are the strengths and weaknesses so they can generate the action item to feedback into the loop for meaningful feedback. Some of the assessment process that if you look into other university, there's some assessment process they're breaking down a 6-year cycle, okay, for the event, and every 3 years, they may want to close loop every 3 years. Okay, if you close loop every 3 years, it will problem occurs in year 1, you recognize in year 2, you try to close in year 3, then are you already solving a problem? You are improving, but that's very slow cycle. So may not necessarily hitting the right point. So the question is, can we automate the process, the more consuming process with data collections? The other part of data compilations. Can we compile all those data in a very meaningful manner that allow you to have a much faster loop, a more effective loop for closing the loop for improvement? At the end of it, we also need to address the questions. Okay, we're doing program accreditations, evaluations, but those are still on the averaging effect. They're looking at the entire student body, okay, making sure that we're averaging out and see whether the whole program moving in right directions. But at the end of it, we're not looking at program, we should be looking at individual students. Okay, would the individual student be properly assessed that allow us to really quantify, are they meeting our OBE goal? Okay, that's really what we want. So how do you do that? Okay, in the past, even now, some schools still doing it, is allow students, actually mentor the student to collect their work, to form their own student portfolio. So that 4 years later, they look at all the student portfolio and they can gauge from these students whether they're learning from year 1 to year 4, whether there's any improvement in the portfolio. The problem with that is it's data intensive for one, and second is the student portfolio may or may not have anything to do with your program assessment, because students collect anything they want. So in a way, we need to figure out what would be another better way of collecting all this objective evidence that's significant enough and also related enough to what we really want. Now, when it comes to assessment, okay, and how to automate, first we need to understand the assessment process and the evaluation process. When it comes to assessment process, okay, can we go look into more detail at the program level, how to automate the entire process at program level? The next logical question we're going to ask, can this process be extended to entire institutions? The answer is yes, of course. When it comes to entire institution, let's say this is university 1. University in general will have its own high-level university missions. Okay, and then university has high-level institution-wide student outcome that apply across all the programs. For individual program, okay, let's say engineering program or professional program, in general, they have their own student outcome. But non-professional program, they may not have the student outcome. So then they may adopt the institution-wide student outcome. Then for the professional program, the engineering program, health sciences, education, for example, their student outcome, for each student outcome, they need to coordinate, feed it down to the course outcome for every one of them. So this information are mainly from the university missions line up to the program education objective for each individual program. They need to be coordinated. Then from there, depends on the professional program, they may have their own set of student outcome. They also need to be coordinated to the individual courses. So this information flow from top to bottom. That's assessment. That will be the assessment information. Okay, of course, the university student outcome and the PEO in general also being affected by the nationwide, there will be your institution-wide student outcome or the accreditation board of professional organization. And those are the input that students have to take into in order to form this part of the information flow down. So therefore assessments. But when it comes to evaluations, the information that flow down to the very bottom at cost level that we begin to collect, when they collect all this data from the bottom layer, the cost level, then we need to flow up, roll up to the top and flow up to the top that how that information we collected that we can associate to the proper student outcome. One, the set of information you collected, how they actually tie into the program educational objective for their program. Eventually, how all this program PO information collected from bottom, how they associate to the institutional-wise student outcome, and how they associate with the university missions. So this information flow up. That's why I call evaluations. Please feel free to stop me any given time because I'm going through this concept first, okay, so that we understand exactly what we're looking at. Then later I'll show you a tool set that can do this part of the automations. Basically, is to simplify systematically how to collect data and how to compile data to remove these two tedious, time-consuming workload from the faculty first. Now, if you look at the how these tools are eval tools, okay, in facilitate the entire automation process, we start with the program execution objective or student outcome that pretty much will be defined by each individual program. Then from there, we're looking into what will be the clear articulated performance indicator and the coordinated course outcome for every courses. Now, this part here will be much of your curriculum design. Okay, once the curriculum design is done, okay, so then you offer the courses, and then offer courses that when eval tool comes in. Okay, so whether you're looking into the courses, program, and audit experience itself, will you be able to provide opportunity for students to learn, to achieve the end goal? So OBE most likely will fall under these categories. How do you create a sensible teaching pedagogy environment for students to learn, to empower students to learn? Okay, once you achieve, then when students produce the result, we need to somehow assess the student achievement of learning outcome. And at the end of it, using those results, that how to improve the teaching, how to improve the learning environment, even or how to improve the resources that allow us to go back closing the loop. So you probably have to create action item. This action item in general can be at the course level or the program level, and at times could be even at the institution level. So that form a loop for this. Now, this process of automations is made possible, okay, because we're using the FCAT methodology. Now, before we dig into further what FCAT methodology, okay, let's look into what are the element or information that we need to collect at different part of programs so that we can form a full picture and go after accreditations. First is assessment itself. You must have an assessment plan. Okay, the assessment plan, they can lay out how do you collect data that's meaningful for your program. It could be 1-year cycle, 3-year cycle, 6-year cycle, depends on which part of the assessment process you're looking at. So then the assessment process, you have plan, you have assessment process, go with the plan. Then you must also evaluate on your own assessment plan itself, whether the assessment plan that you implemented or have in place that really makes sense. So the process itself needs to be improved. So that's assessment. So once those data have been collected, you must also have evaluation plan. So with the evaluation plan, they have focus on the cost level evaluations or the peer evaluations or SO evaluations and how those things play out. So then you must lay out the proper process in the time frame for it to happen. And in your environment for the student outcome, you must also have a set of performance indicator. Now, the set of performance indicator, okay, PI, we call it PI. It can be broad or it can be generic, okay, or specific PI. Now, which one makes sense to your program is something that you need to discuss as a group in your program to figure out exactly what the end goal is, what you try to achieve. So the performance indicator in general are very unique to each program. Even though student outcome is the same for all, for engineering program, for example, but the PI in general will be unique to each program. So for all these evaluation, at the end of it, you have a set of action items for closure. So how do you implement and ensure or track also that your action items are actually being properly implemented and look gauge on the effect or impact on improvement by all these action items. Then of course, you need to showcase and document and show other people that how all these things really work. So you need to collect student work. Okay, and student work, and then this is where time-consuming process comes in. Okay, student work 1 year is okay if doing this for every year at all different level and so many students, they become a nightmare. And also, do you need to have survey data? So when it comes to survey data, there's indirect assessments. Student work is a direct assessment. That's directly assessed student work. That's student work. Now, survey data, indirect assessment. Now, in the past, indirect assessment is okay, but now, okay, indirect assessment by itself is not sufficient. So it must also direct assess on the student work. But from my perspective, we need both. Okay, you need both information to form a full picture, not only directly looking at student work. You must also listen to students, do it to our customer. You must also look at the student and see what they complain about. Okay, and so that's what survey data give additional input to your program. And at the end of it, after collect all these informations, the next question is how to organize these informations in a meaningful manner so that the AP evaluator, when they come on site to do evaluation in your program, they also will not get frustrated and just digging through all this evidence that have no correlation whatsoever. So the next question is, in the past, okay, we actually spent a great deal of time for every single visit. Okay, we have one whole room that every faculty must put in intensive hours to collect the student objective evidence for the course, the good, the average, and the bad for every course, and then also and organize them in a manner only per course, pertain to the course and how will the course have a course outcome, the survey data, and what will the associated performance indicator the course try to meet. That's okay, but the question is now, most of the time when the AP evaluation comes in, they want to know how to look into student outcome 1 and what are the objective evidence associated with student outcome 1. Don't let me spend time to figure out what you do in every courses. So in a sense, now we need to organize this in differently, more effective manner, so that it make it easier for the AP evaluator to look into it and see, okay, for student outcome 1, these are the objective evidence from different courses, and how can I put it up and look into it as fast as I could. Okay, that become an issue. So we resolve this issue. Okay, we can fully automate this process, so we can go green totally. We don't spend a single cent on printing them out in paper. Now, also another process we also need to know will be the student advising. Okay, you need to show course that whether your student advising is effective. Okay, and then the transcript itself, okay, allow them to evaluate whether you have like our order, our sequence courses the student have taken, they're not supposed to be, and how to do the credit hour transfer history of students. So all these issues need to be addressed also. And other issue, for example, with faculty resource, faculty credential, okay, and whether faculty are up to date in the professions. Facility, okay, whether your facility is adequate, okay, and appropriate to support your program. How about the admin support? Do you get enough admin support from the top so that your program can function in a proper manner? An advisory board, which is outsider looking into your system. So look into all these things here. There's so many elements. Okay, the program must prepare and show course they actually have all this. Now, the one that must start is the one supported by the eval tools. Now, the whole process begins with FCAT. Okay, of course, there are other processes called GIS model, but for this talk, we focus only on FCAT, the faculty course assessment report, this process, because this process first started in 2001 when I was first appointed as a chair. Then I was looking for tools that allow me to collect data and assess the data in a very fast manner, because we are a small department, and with a very small group of faculty, then I just can't do all this thing by myself. Okay, so I need to figure out one best way to do all this thing in the most time efficient manner. So then I look at FCAT itself. FCAT concept is based on these 3 things: plan, teaching delivery. At the end of term, we do self-reflection and create general action items. Now, when it first come out, I look into this one here. We implement using paper and pen, using Word document. So it makes sense because this is also backward design process. They're based on the same concept. So you first plan first, looking for your course level, exactly what do you target or you want student to learn at the end of semester. Of course, what you want student to learn, this is the key thing here. We call it course outcome. All right, so this course outcome that you set up for your course. Now the question is a course outcome actually aligned with the performance indicator, which further aligns to a student outcome? That's the key. If these two does not align, then what you already have is an OBE that detached away from your accreditation process. So the key point is, if you want to align your OBE process into the accreditations, then this planning process is critical. That the teaching from a faculty perspective, this is what they want to teach. They want to try to achieve from at the course level they're teaching. Then how will this course outcome, any OBE teaching methodology or strategy to apply in the class? How all this planning at the end of it allow me to achieve the end goal? Okay, when I look at this system here, I also published a couple of work on how do we come up with systematic mean. I expand the FCAR methodology into a systematic mean to identify and justify the key assignment. Okay, because in every course that you teach, you may have like 3 or 4 course outcome. Then you may have like 10 or so assignment that you design for the course. Now, remember this one back to where we look into the ABC of engineering educations. Like this general statement saying that the faculty want the student to have the ability to design, the ability to synthesize, evaluate. But if you were to teach, you ask it a problem, solve the problem. Then you're not really teaching design or evaluations. So those are things that you have to be, every faculty need to be aware of it. So how to do this at the department level or program level, when you design the course, before you come to this point, as a department, you're supposed to look at your entire curriculum from a freshman year all the way to your senior year. Now, my suggestion for a freshman year, you focus on the compilation part of the Bloom taxonomy. Second year, focus on the knowledge. First, knowledge and comprehensions. Then on the third year, focus on the application analysis. On the fourth year, then focus on the synthesis and evaluations. If you break that down in that manner, then you know exactly at which level and then what you have to focus on when you teach. So it needs to be coordinated somehow. However, by doing so, it doesn't mean that the freshman year they don't learn the evaluation synthesis. Remember the learning process, you go from the knowledge, comprehension, application analysis, synthesis, evaluation. This is happening at every level. It's just that at the freshman level, you focus on the knowledge level. On the sophomore year, you focus on the comprehension level. And third year, focus on application analysis. And then from the fourth year, they focus on evaluation and synthesis, the design. Okay, so that's what the planning does. Okay, once you have this planning, then when you're doing the teaching delivery, that's where you collect the objective evidence. And this process also needs to be automated. Okay, make it simple for faculty. So this is where we propose the course portfolio rather than student portfolio. Okay, student portfolio may or may have anything to do with program accreditations, but course portfolio that collected in this manner are collecting those key evidence that you identify that allow you to satisfy or justify whether the median course outcome that align with the performance indicator for the align with the student outcome. Those are the key assignment of objective evidence that we need to form in the course portfolio in that manner. But once you form portfolio in that manner, how to systematically collect it, that even the program don't have to worry about it, and that's the key. At the end of the term, you're looking to self-reflections and action item. Now, this part here, we used to do it by paper and pen. At the end of the term, the faculty have to write a small reflections, okay, and explain exactly and how the course being delivered. Okay, what would be the action item that faculty suggested for improvement for next cycle or offering? Now, of course, the question is, can the faculty do a summative and formative evaluation both for the course? Now, faculty tend to do summative evaluation at the end of the term. The question is, can faculty also do formative evaluation real time, and so that they can improve the teaching as I go? So that at the end of the term, they can do a more meaningful summative evaluations. Now, can we achieve that? The answer is yes. They all lie into the FCAR implementations. So we also have a process of defining how do you systematically write your reflections so to be more relevant to your program evaluations. We also have a process that systematically allow you to construct a well-formed course syllabus that makes sense for the program evaluations. Okay, at this point, I think I will probably switch over to look into a tool set that makes sense for automations. But the first thing here, again, we'll go back to the cycle here. We're looking at curriculum mapping. Later on, go to FCAT methodology, and then how to roll up the data from individual courses to the PVT, and then to look into the PI evaluations, student evaluations, and term summary, and how to close the loop. At the end, I want to show you how to look at individual students. Okay, how to quantify it, which meeting individual student meeting the student outcome for OB tracking purposes. Now look at curriculum itself. Okay, this is outcome mapping matrix. We tend to classify courses into introductory, reinforced, and mastery. Okay, introductory is yellow in color. Okay, reinforced and mastery. Now introductory courses in general will be your freshman year or sophomore year. The reinforced courses, it could be sophomore year and senior and junior year. The master level courses will be junior and senior year, depends on the courses you offer. So then these are the focus I just mentioned. For freshman years, you focus on knowledge. Second year, focus on comprehension, and third year, focus on applicant analysis. And then fourth year, focus on the synthesis evaluations when it comes to curriculum design. So let me switch over. Now, this eval tool, okay, of course, I log in is roles-based. It depends on who you log in. It'll give you the particular feature that you need. Okay, I'm going to look into the faculty office first. So these are the courses that I teach, for example. Okay, I can look into my current courses, my past courses, and everything else. Now, the many features in this tool set, okay, we will not be able to touch upon today, but we're going to focus only on the feature that pertain to outcome-based assessments. Okay, let's look into Circuit 2. So in Circuit 2, the whole concept of our tool is to set it up before you manage it. Okay, if you set it up, so this is the course informations. The FCAR, we're starting off at this point. Okay, you have a course descriptions. It's supposed to go in according to your catalog, like consistent, the prerequisites, and the course outcome. So every course that we offer, okay, we are, let me see, make it bigger. Okay, it's important that you have the course outcome being properly defined. Now, do remember that the ABET do not mandate course outcome. Okay, they do mandate that for your program, you need to satisfy the performance indicator and student outcome, but there's no course outcome that is mandated. If you go after meter state, then course outcome is needed. But for us to align the OBE to the program accreditations, then in my view, course outcome are needed. Okay, they need the course outcomes spell exactly what is course are doing and what faculty try to achieve. And the question is his teaching whether aligned with the program accreditations or a program goal that is critical. So the course outcome, let's say for example, in this example here, we have like course outcome 1, course outcome 2, and course outcome 3, course outcome 4. So for them, of course, you have the standard course outline and course assessment method. Okay, these are all assignment. And then how the assessment method are being used for satisfying the course outcome, textbook supporting tools, and course policy, and the grading policy. Now, this is a key part here. The FCAR starting off with this part here being defined. Okay, so this part here define how would the course and program assessment criteria being set. So for the course assessment criteria, we're using a vector called the EAMU. E mean excellent, A mean adequate, M mean minima, and unsatisfactory mean U. So this is EMU vector to use in FCAR. Okay, we score them 90% and above, and then called excellent. Okay, then 75% and above is called adequate. Okay, 60% above is called minimum. Anything below is called unsatisfactory. So that's EMU vector. You could also replace EMU vector by rubric-based system. You can do that. But eventually, whatever you do in the rubric-based system, you'll convert back to EMU in these two sets. So we are consistent, can apply to all courses. Now, these are course outcome 1, course outcome 2, course outcome 3, and then course outcome 4. So for every course outcome, the thing that we in the FCAT that we're really looking for is for this course outcome 1, how would that align to your student outcome? In this case, align to SO1. Okay, this course outcome aligned to student SO1. And then for SO1, which performance indicator are we really trying to map? That would be PI19. So it's SO1 and PI19. So then you know exactly they are performance indicator that refer to the SO1 and then 9 of them. So we're looking at the number 9. Then the thing that we're looking for with metadata for every faculty to do is when you design your course in FCAT, you must define what are the key assignments. So in this example, there are many assignments, but not all assignments are needed as a key evidence. So we just pick the key assignment that makes sense. So normally mandated for key assignment, you should have a title. So at least when we look into it, we know exactly what they mean. And also we need some form of justifications. Okay, the justifications address 3 questions. First, what this key assignment is. Okay, why being selected. Okay, and then how is it used to gauge the particular PI that you try to map. So it doesn't have to be 3 sub-sentences as long as it covers 3 concepts. So the justification had to be very precise exactly why being used and selected and how being judged to meeting the outcome. So that's basically what we have here. Will be for every course outcome. Now we know for sure for the course outcome, we align to the student outcome. We align to the very specific performance indicator and which key evidence are we using, and also what are the justifications. Okay, so it does spend quite a bit of time initially to design this, but once this process designed and uploaded in eval tools, then this information become automatically picked up by the eval tool and filtered into your FCAR faculty course assessment report at the end of the term. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 outcomes, and the rest of them are just depends on your university-wise policy, how they want to define what are the components needed, and for as a course information. So that will be the first one. Okay, so remember we have the curriculum first. Okay, then we come to here. Now this is individual course. The curriculum is more on faculty level. Okay, when it comes to faculty level, these are all the tools that pertain to facilitate and support from a chair perspective or program coordinator perspective, how to then manage the entire process of assessments. So let's say, for example, I'm looking into let's say, for example, I'm looking into, this would be my 7 of the student outcome, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 of them. Okay, for each student outcome, what will be the corresponding PI? So you can tell for SO1, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 4 PI. Okay, and all these PI, this is generic PI, besides there's only 4 of them. If you go with specific PI, it tends to be a lot. Okay, so it depends on what your program try to achieve. Okay, if I look into my second SO, and it still be only 4 PI, so not that many. So let's look at my third one. And now you have 3 PI. So by looking at the number, it's very straightforward. 3, 1, it satisfies SO3. And then this 1, 2, 3 satisfies that would be the specific PI. Okay. Once you have this defined from a system level, okay, then you should define what would be the corresponding curriculum outcome mapping matrix. Now this is dynamically generated. In other words, for every term, you may have some modification, update to your courses mapping of the CO to any PI. When that change, you're going to find out they're going to spend a greater time just to figure out how to recompile the data. So in this case, this data is automatically generated by eval2 and let you know exactly this is a live view of your current mapping of every courses, EC 111, okay, 140, and everything, all the courses they offer for that term. Okay, how are those mapping to a student outcome 1, outcome 2, outcome 3? The student outcome 1, you may have like 1, 2, 3, 4 PI. And how are those being mapped? So you have like I, R, and M. I stand for introductory level. So then you know these introductory level courses. And R, reinforcement level courses. Then it will be reinforcement level courses, and M, the master level courses. Now, this is where the FCAT methodology different from the GI assessment model. The GI assessment model focuses more on the master level courses. In particular, for a program that doesn't really have a tool set to manage all this thing here, then the logical way of doing this, collecting data, is focusing on the master level courses and judge whether you're meeting the standard. If you do, then you're good. What happens if you don't? Yeah, if you don't, then the question is, you see a problem here in the master level courses, but you're knowing where the root cause of the problem. It could be happen at this course, it could be happen before, there's nothing there. So that's why we adopt FCAT assessment model. FCAT assessment model also classified into I, R, and M, but the data collected is collected all across the entire level. So that we know that if any problem occurs here in this level, rather than this level, then the FCAT will tell me exactly where the problem is. Okay, so that's from a curriculum perspective. Okay, so from once this has been defined, then each faculty will know that, let's say, for example, I'm teaching 140. Okay, then I need to satisfy the student outcome 6, especially 6.1 and 6.2, then they'll be assigned to that faculty. So the faculty is supposed to satisfy these two, okay, S1, 6.1, 6.2 in the EC 140. Okay, if I were teaching the EC 228, circuit 1, then I'm supposed to satisfy PR12, and I also supposed nothing else. So that's why when you design a curriculum or any outcome assessment, you first start off with the curriculum mapping, top level. As a group, sit down and discuss it, okay, figure out how all this need to be divided, okay, or properly categorized and assigned to individual faculty. So individual faculty will know exactly for the course that they teach, how many do they need to map. And then based on that one, then they design the course accordingly to generate or to drive the proper key assignment to give the proper learning experience for the students. Then they collect the relevant objective evidence in that manner. And so this is what the curriculum mapping is. The curriculum mapping also tells exactly at the first very top level view, whether you have like how many mapping here and there's no mapping here. Now remember, this is only one term data. To gain a full perspective of curriculum mapping, you need to look at fall and spring, one academic year. In general, for one academic year, you combine these two metrics together, then you have a complete picture of your curriculum, how all these things are satisfied. So the curriculum mapping is step 1, which also is the last step. They can tell exactly what's the strength and weaknesses of your program. So at the end of it, we are trying to write a report to justify that our curriculum design makes sense. Our curriculum design allowed us to drive our student learning experience to achieve the end goal. So that's what you try to tell. That's the story you try to tell. So let's go back to FCAT. So we went through the curriculum mapping. Okay, let's go back to at the faculty level. Okay, so let me show you the past data which I have. And we look at circuit 1. Okay, in circuit 1, okay, so what I have here, so this is, again, is my FCAT setup. Then go to my lessons. We don't need to go to lessons. So this is all lessons that set up for the class. And then assignment. Okay, so in this case, this is circuit, isn't it? Oh. I'm looking at the old interface. Okay, second. Okay, somehow jump back to my older versions. And let me log back in again. So we'll look at individual faculty office. Okay, let me go course portfolio. And let me go back to subject 2. Okay, let me go back to setup. Okay, if you look at the assignment setup that I have here, okay, what different from a traditional LMS that we have additional column that identify for all these homework set that you created for students. Okay, how will all this homework set have mapping to your course outcome, which are actually being used for the PI and the SO. Okay, so in this course, I have satisfied 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 outcome, but only one that actually being used for settings satisfy the PI SO1, only one. But this is pretty much mandated by the overall curriculum mapping. So that part from program level, it filtered down to individual faculty and say, okay, they must satisfy this. So that's why design the learning experience, they satisfy this. Okay, so that's when you design the course, that's how it's supposed to look like. But at the end of it, how to know you're getting it? Okay, so that's where we're looking into the FCAR. Okay, in the FCAR, this is how it's supposed to look like. Now, in the past, we do this by Word document. So you have a course descriptions. Okay, you also have a section on the indirect assessments. Now, this indirect assessment usually conducted at the end of the term. He will show you perceptions from the students, also perception from a faculty. The faculty do a self-evaluation first and see whether the faculty, how do they gauge, whether they think they're meeting the course outcome. Then we also ask the entire class, what do you think the faculty meeting the course outcome? Now, the reason why we have this section over here, okay, just so that we can gauge whether our student fact perceptions and the faculty perception, whether they align with each other. If they do align, that pretty much means that the rest of the question area that we ask in our course exit survey at the end of the term is very well provide some very meaningful data from the students. Okay, so that's what we use for justifications. Then in FCAR, we also have the grade distributions that tell exactly how many students fail and how many students pass the class. Now, we do not include failed students in our final evaluations. So the failed student most likely will take a course again next time. Then we're going to assess them next time, not this time. So that's why we need to have a grade distributions. Now, the key thing here is this portion over here. Okay, this is a course outcome assessment. So we have a course outcome 1 and course outcome 2 and course outcome 3 and then course outcome 4. Okay, so for this, then course outcome 1, then we're looking for this homework set, and this is justifications, and this is the EMU vector. In this case, you're looking for 1A and 2 unsatisfactory. Okay, so in this case, this is done too well. So the EMU vector is color coded. Okay, so E is green color, A is white color, M would be yellow color, and then U would be red color. So in general, when we have all these problems here, at the end of the term, we're going to have the faculty to do a self-evaluation, the self-reflections, the course delivery, in particular, if the course is short to be red or yellow. Then we want the faculty to justify why that happened and what actually caused it. So we want the justifications and reason why that happened. Then on the action item, that's where we want faculty to suggest an idea, how do you improve this in the next cycle of offering. Okay, that complete the process of FCAR. But FCAR, this one here is a current term, that's why it's not in a term, so we don't see it. So let me show you past term. And let's go to the FCAR. Okay. So this is past term data. So you can see that we have the data from a student, the faculty in this case, I forgot to do it. Okay, and then you have the reflections on the course delivery. But the right reflections, okay, first look into what will be the course outcome assessments. Okay, the data is incomplete. So then you have the course outcome 1, you write the reflections. And so that reflection become a key. And this reflection will also be put up automatically later on, become part of your report. So that's FCAR perspective from individual faculty. Now the thing is, once this is all done, okay, at the end of it, how do we justify all this information at the program level? So then we go to the chair office. Now in the chair office, okay, there are program assessment or program evaluations. Now if the information flow up, we'll look into the program evaluation sections. In program evaluations, we're looking into performance indicator evaluation first, before looking into the student outcome evaluations. Now let's pick one term. There are no that enter the data. Now it has been an hour, and so do you think it's a good time to stop, or we move on?
I think we can take a little break. No.
Okay.
Say 5 minutes. Okay.
5 minutes. Okay.
Okay. And dear audience, please feel free to go to the live chat and put your remarks over there. And also, I would like to declare once again that in the current upcoming virtual summit to be happened on 2022 by Info OBE, all the corporate partners of ASEE, AMEE, IFEES, NSTA, and ACE, all these corporate partners will get a free ticket to join this conference. And also the participants from this webinar, you can join this conference free. And all the affiliate partners of Info OB, you are also welcome to join this conference. Is free. And there is another good things for you available at the Vertex, that is a PD certificate. So your certificate is right away available on Vertex. Vertex is the software or the system in which you have logged in to see this webinar. So you will find eventually in this session, there will be a certificate button, and you can just click it and you will get your certificate for attending this session. I hope you will enjoy this certificate, and it will be helpful for you for your future reference. And of course, you are all welcome to put your comments, remarks, or questions in the chat box. We will try to accommodate your questions and your queries after the session. So let us have a break, and after a few minutes, we will gather again. Or else, if you have any questions, you can write into the chat box.
So 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. Dear attendees, you can put your questions into the chat box. And if you see that your question is unattended, you can just put it once more in the chat box, because there are some sequencing problem into the chat box. So sometimes some questions are missed. I think Professor Mac, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, thank you. So you can start now.
Okay, I think there's one question on the floor. So maybe I should address this question first. I think there's a question saying that, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. There is a question from Dr. Mutaharul Islam. In many, he's asking that there are in many cases, we are mapping CO with SO directly, and we don't define PI. What do you think of the quality of this type of assessment?
Okay, in the past, okay, there's really no PI requirement, so we map directly to SO. In the past, that's what we do. Now, the only problem is the SO in general are defined as a broad statements. So it's very difficult to have the key assignment to really map directly to SO, say satisfy the entire SO. In fact, that's the main reason why we need to break it down further for the performance indicator. that's much more easier or directly map to your key assignment. So if you're still dealing with the key assignment mapping to SO, then maybe it's time to look at your curriculum and define the performance indicator at this time. And so you move forward, then you can have a better, more tightly controlled process.
So what could be the sequence? Should we, are you saying that PIs are course specific?
PI is more a subset of the student outcome. Let's say for student outcome 1, let me just pick one here. Okay, let's say, for example, I'm looking into let's say for this particular student outcome, there will be ability to identify, formulate, and solve complex engineering problem by applying principle of engineering, science, and math. That's a student outcome. But you look at carefully, it's very broad. You need to identify, you formulate, and solve. Those are three keywords. So it's quite difficult to come up with one assignment or one objective evidence to satisfy all three at the same time. On top of that, you must also satisfy you applying the principle of engineering, science, and math. So it's quite difficult. So that's why we usually break it down in this manner. It depends on the program that you have. So in our program, electrical engineering, okay, for example, in this case, there are 4 PI. Okay, PI 1.1, you focus on applied probability math. Okay, they include probability statistics, but that's required in our program. But if you are computer engineering, you do not require probability statistics. You probably require linear algebra or Descartes math. So the requirements are different. So it would not make sense to apply one to satisfy SO. They become, I even find it more difficult. So easier to define the PI first. So for example, the second PI apply deterministic math, including the single multivariable calculus, transform, linear algebra, or discrete math, because we are computer engineering. Okay, and then you define the Newtonian and Maxwell physics to solve problem is electrical engineering. So it's very much well precise. And then analyze, design problem containing hardware and software components. Okay, so that's basically what we're looking for. That from our program perspective, we say, okay, if we satisfy this for PI, then they'll allow me to satisfy this SO as a whole.
Sorry, my mic was muted. So we have another question from Engineer Muhammad Anisur Rahman. He's asking that what are the standard format of assessment and corresponding evaluation?
Now, there's no such thing as standard, but they are prevailing best practices. Now, from the last 20 years of dealing with assessments, there are basically 2 giant models. One I call it the GI assessment model. I named after Gordon Rogers assessment model. That model has a very well-defined process. Now, I call it Gordon Rogers because she contributes so much to the ABET and the accreditation community, so I just named after her. Okay, it's a tribute to her. Now, the assessment model is also focused on looking at the averaging effect of the assessment model of all the evidence you collected. So for example, you collect 1,000 pieces of evidence, you don't have enough people to do all this, then that process allows the sample, the objective evidence, maybe 10% of it. So in other way, looking at the averaging effect of the program, can run as specific. Then you also rely on the independent rater, and then recruit them in to look into this article, and then write the action item, and feed it back to the program coordinator or director. Then they can look at those and figure out how to implement the process. Okay, I find the process is effective, lightweight if you don't have a tool set. Okay, so however, because I have a tool set, I must prefer not to miss any information, and that's why I go with the FCAR assessment model. Now, FCAR assessment model, you can think of it as the enhanced GI assessment model. So in addition to focus on the mastery level courses, I also look into the reinforced courses, the introduction level courses, and apply consistently an EANU rubric factor across the board. Okay, so all faculty know exactly what the learning mean. Okay, so then we'll go to those. Now, we do have a systematic manner of how to implement those process, and that itself is a workshop. Okay, even to understand exactly how to implement FCAR, that itself is a workshop that we can actually go through it and see and how to guide faculty through to define FCAR, implement FCAR in the teaching, and how to structure the course information at the end of it, how to collect information and what to look at. And that itself is a workshop. We can talk about those in the future if there's enough interest. We can always create a workshop in that area and see how to implement FCAR. That'll make sense.
And there's another question that you did not mention anything about rubric. Do you have anything to say about rubric in your talk today, or?
Yeah, I can show you rubric. Okay. Now EAMU vector is the rubric, but it's a score-based rubric. So when it comes to rubric, there's word-based rubric, there's score-based rubric. So the FCAR methodology is based on score-based rubric. Okay, let me show you more precisely what this really means. Okay, and hopefully this one won't give me data error. Okay, let me see, So let me go to great assessments. Right. So this particular assignment, is a key assignment. And in this key assignment, these are the PI they will try to satisfy. And then we're using EAMU as a vector. So when they create a particular assignment, if it's key assignment, we spell exactly what are the rubric. Okay, so this is rubric for E, this is rubric for A, this is rubric for M, this is rubric for U. So the faculty know exactly what we try to look at for rubric. Now, if you want to define your own rubric, you could. Okay, so then go back to setup course and then set rubric setup. Okay, this is where you need to add in a rubric. Now, the system also allows you to import rubric. Okay, you can, also don't have anything set up yet. Okay, you can define the criteria. Okay, in general, we recommend people to use E, A, M, and U to be consistent with the rest of them. You can change whatever you want it, then you can define what are the scoring for each one of them and define what are the dimensions, what does it really mean. Okay, so you can define those, then you can form this one. Or you can add a new rubric template. Let me see if I can use one here. Okay, let's say senior design rubric. That they define these are the dimensions and these are the rubric. Okay, so you could scroll all the way down and say, I want to download this template. Okay, so automatically you have a rubric system. Okay, that consists of this dimension, quite a lot, introductions, okay, problem identification, working criteria, research resources, summary research finding. So these are a standard template. You can delete them if you want to, or you can simplify them if you want to. Or then they can update what are the content for each of these as the criteria. You can do those. Okay, so this defines 4 is 1 point, 3 is average, and 5 is excellent. Then the system will automate. The only thing different is once they accepted this, okay, so this is called rubric 110. So you could publish this one. Okay, you can publish this one for other people to use if you wanted to. Okay, so now how does it apply to replace the EMU? So basically what that meant is you go back to your assignment setup. Okay, so let's say, for example, I'm looking at setup. Okay, so this assignment setup. Okay, so let me, for example, I'm dealing with this one here. Okay, let me see, I'm going to edit. Okay, and then here we define, okay, then this I want to map to this particular SO. Then this will be my justifications. Then you can say, I want to use my own rubric rather than using the system given EMU. So you can choose your own rubric that you just set up earlier, 110. So you can use this one as a rubric for your grading purposes. And then you can just save changes. Okay, then what the difference is will be at the end when you're done with those, and this is problem homework 9. Okay, so at the end, when you go to grading the problem, you go to grade assignment, we're looking at homework 9. Okay, now he showed the entire rubric that you set up, which is quite a lot in this case. Then at the end of it, this for dimension 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, for these students, okay, so you grade them according to this. Then the system will score it for you. So yes, the answer is yes, you could use your own rubric to replace the system EMU. But at the end of it, we're just converting this score back into EMU so they can be consistent with the rest of the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this. I think we'll get more enlightened in your further speeches.
Okay.
In the meantime, I can see Mr. Bahi Aldin Ahmed Alahatu, you are requesting for the PDF slides. For your information, you can see the videos on demand into the Vertex. So you can later on, you can see the videos again and again. So I think so this much for now, and Professor Fong Mak, you can continue the rest of your talk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, earlier we're looking into the FCAR from the faculty perspective. Now, those data from individual course need to roll up automatically by eval tools. Not a question from the program coordinator from a chair perspective. What are they looking at? Okay, so we're going to look into PI evaluation first. Okay, so we'll look into, let's say, spring, E department. Oh. Okay. Now, at the first glance, they let you know that these are student outcome 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 7. Okay, and how do you do from a top level perspective? So this is color coded white, red color, yellow color, and white color and yellow color flag. So these are information that flow up from the bottom to the top. Now, if we look at student outcome 1, for example, okay, student outcome 1, the overall aggregate value is 4.43, but actually come from PL11, PL12, PL13, PL14. So these are the overall aggregate value that pertain to the PL11 from all the courses that mapping to PL11. So when you do evaluation, we pretty much look into the PL11. If they get too many of them, you focus on the yellow and the red. The green and white in general mean that you're okay, but in this case, they're not that many, so we'll just go through them in details. So you select PI 11, then he'll let you know you're looking at PL11. Okay, for PL11, and these are the two courses. Okay, so 351 and 358, their contributions are mapping to PL11. They even let you know these are the reinforced level courses and master level courses. And this table is called a PVD table. It's performance vector table. The FCAT we're looking at is a very low level at the cost level that faculty engage and produce the data accordingly, mapping. When all the data are collected and on the bottom, then automatically flow up to the top for a program evaluator to look at, and for the program coordinator or chair to look at. And see, now we sit down as a group to look into this program. So PI11, these are two courses. Now this is where yellow is color flag also. The green means you exceed expectations, and white you're okay. Then if you're looking at red is problematic, yellow is concerned. Now hypothetically, let's say in this particular example, we exceed expectations because we do really well in the reinforced level courses, and master level courses we're also meeting it. So we exceed expectations. Now hypothetically, let's say for example, if this is white, this is yellow, this is green, you still exceed expectations. Now what happened at the master level courses, it turned out to be yellow. Okay, it turned out to be yellow, then if the problem caused by the master level courses or caused by reinforced level courses, then if the reinforced level courses turn out to be red, then you know the problem may not necessarily appear on the master, it may just very well begin at the reinforced level courses. That's what the PVD table comes in. It gives you all this additional information where the GISS model will not be able to do so. In the FCAT assessment model, we capture all the data from master level courses, reinforced to all the way to introductory level courses. Then we know exactly what will be the potential root cause. If they already happened in master level courses or at the reinforced or introductory level courses. Then you can feed those information back to the faculty accordingly, and then they can look into it and see what can we do better. Now here, at the end of it, we only classify them to be exceeding or meeting or below expectations. Okay, individually, you're going to have like color flag, let you know the PVD table. Okay, so once this is done, okay, so once this is done, then overall, you will have white color. Even though here you have one yellow, but overall you have a white color, so you're actually doing okay. Okay, so once you're done with all the PI evaluation for the term, so the next thing is, what will be the student outcome evaluations? That's the next step. So we're done with PI evaluations. Now looking to the SO evaluations. So PI evaluation they just done is for individual PI to pertain to the corresponding SO. Now this one here is overall average from SO. They consider all the data from PI. So from here, you need to go through one more round of review very, very quickly. Doesn't have to be very long. So look into it. These are the summary data that we have. Okay, this is another level of PVD table. They roll up all the PI from each PI 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4, from all the courses, related courses, from all different level of courses, then group together pertain to the particular SO. So this is more a top level aggregate view that contributed by all the PI from different level. Okay, so when you look into this one here, then you go through evaluations, and this is the report that you're generating for the particular SO. So these are the report that you just generated when you're doing the evaluation for PI. Each PI, you have individual, color-coded, so whether it meeting expectation, exceeding expectation, or below expectation. But at the end of it, okay, this is the overall summary at the top level for SO. You have white color, are you meeting expectation or below expectations? Here we just say meeting expectations because one of them is yellow. Okay, but when it's yellow or red, it doesn't mean that you have a problem either. If it's all red, it may just well indicating that your program is way too tough. If it's all green, it may just indicate that your program may just need to raise the bar. Okay, so all this color-coded is only as an indicator, but it's not the deciding factor. Okay, deciding factor is to be your team dynamic to figure out, okay, what's going on here. The color-coded only give you an indicator, let you know this could be a potential area that you want to look at and analyze it and see whether if you truly have a problem or no problem at all. So at the end of it, it could be yellow, it still can meeting expectations. So then you need to make your argument, your justification, your discussion here, and then what will be the potential action item, who are the reviewer. So this information, once it's done at the SO level, then the next step is term summary or executive summary. Okay, so executive summary, let's go over to executive summary. Okay, in the executive summary, okay, we're looking at, let me look at spring e-courses. Okay, so these are executive summary for all the SO at the very top level. In fact, this is a report that you want to generate at the end of it for your self-start report. So this entire executive 4.43 meeting expectations, for 2.19, you're not meeting expectations, you're below expectations is color-coded red, let you know that your two of them are below expectations. Okay, so then these are the graph. Now you can also look into the next level, the detailed SO and PI executive summary. Then these are let you know that for SO, the SO1, and these are the corresponding PI report. And then for SO2, and then these are the corresponding PI report. Then SO3, these are corresponding PI report. So this thing can also be generated and it become part of your self-start report. Then you can also look, drill down in further and look into the detailed PVD table. Okay, for SO1, these are the PI 1, 2, 3, 4 they try to satisfy. And these are all the courses. Okay, these are all the result and detailed data. Okay, the overall aggregate average. And then you have like SO2, SO3, and then SO4, and so on. Okay, so that's for the report, which you can also generate it as part of the report. Now, also one more critical item would be the reflections. But this one is the capture of all the action item or reflection by the faculty. Okay, and for all these courses that pertain to this SO1, 2, and 3. Okay, this, for example, EC 231, electronics. And these are the reflections that faculty written. And whether have any action item, in this case, none. So you have all the reflections. Okay, now this one you have reflections. Also, you have an action item. Okay, so this one here pretty much showcase to the evaluator when it comes in. They can ask the questions, how to ensure that you're closing the loop in a proper manner, and who responsible for it. Okay, so to address a question in this case, you can show them this. Okay, so that all the action items generated, you can track the history. Okay, you can see at which cost level, who are the owner, okay, what are the expected closing date, and what will be corresponding PI action item that suggested for the faculty to close the loop for improvement. So the faculty, when they teach this course next cycle, then this new action item generated from the last cycle will become the old action item that appears on the FCAR automatically for that faculty to look at. So that faculty at the end of the term, he go back into, when you write the reflections, he go check whether they have any old action item, okay, whether they have closed all the action item, and that's why you write the proper reflections and may generate new set of action item or none, or just say everything closed. So that's how you close the loop at the program level. Okay. Now the next question is it possible to close the loop at the program level? So during the evaluations, which I didn't show you, during evaluations, if the group look into the FCAR and potentially that's the issue, if the faculty suggests a new action item for you to close, when you look into it, closing the action item at the cost level wouldn't make sense, but they require additional resource, then you want to elevate that particular action item to program level. When you elevate to the program level, then you also need to figure out who responsible to closing that particular program level action item. Then you need to assign a different committee. So to do that, that's what you are doing is creating something called the My Committee. Okay, My Committee, you can create a whole bunch of different task force or committee work. So what I'm going to show you is the ECA APEC community. Okay, that's what I created for my group. Okay, in there, you can look at meeting, task list, and document. Okay, this is a document where we keep track of all the information that pertain to that cycle of evaluations. Okay, you can look at the APEC report from the APEC visit. Okay, and these are the document or responses we have with the evaluator. So we check those informations. Okay, and do we have the annual report? Okay, do we have the course syllabus? Okay, do we have the curriculum data? So we capture all this information. So this is basically just a depository. The key thing is the meeting. Okay, this you can keep track of the meeting minute over here live, so they know exactly how many meetings that you conducted to pertain to ABAC. Now the task list that I show here is the result of the meeting. Okay, at this point, and for this program APEC 1.4, okay, and the meeting that generated being elevated to program level been assigned to me. Okay, so the priority is normal. Okay, assigned to this committee by whom? Okay, and these are things that need to be addressed. So once the program or the committee address this issue done, then get up to the status stay closed. So this will give you another tracking mechanism to how do you close the loop for improvement at the program level. So we touch on two things: closing the loop by action item at the cost level by the faculty, and how to close the loop for improvement at program level by the committee. Okay, so two ways of looking at it. Now, I pretty much touch upon all the essential components of the curriculum mapping, all the way to how to look into the FCAR, how FCAR affect the individual course assessment and collecting data and key evidence. Then from that, roll up the data to the PI, they can do evaluations. Then later on for SO evaluations and lead into the executive summary report. And then at the end, how do you close the loop at the program level and cost level? Okay, but we're still left with one more question. Okay, for OBE purposes, we want to know individual student wise, how do we judge that individual student actually meeting what we want? So for that to happen, okay, you need to go to chair office and student advising. Under student advising, of course, you can look at any. Let me see. Okay, we can track all the note that we have communicated with students during the advising. So this is how we track the effectiveness of the advising system. Now the key thing is, let's look at the individual students. Okay, we'll look at E department. Okay, let me just pick Jacob. Now, these are data I just entered, so I know it's there. Okay, so for this particular example, for this tutor student we just selected, okay, so for this term, spring 2020 and fall 2020, you can see the tracking mechanic, the progressive of his learning, the pertain to each of the student outcome. Okay, then you know you can generate at the end of it, by the time you graduate, and create this matrix for him, let him know that this is what you have satisfied all the student outcome at the end, and how well he learned. Now, depends on how you want to use this data. In fact, you can drill down further and see what's inside. Okay, just choose outcome 1. Okay, so here we'll show all the details. Okay, for every courses, okay, and the detail how it's supposed to look like. Now for this report over here, it really depends on your program, exactly what you try to achieve. Okay, but as minimum, okay, we can actually using this to replace the student portfolio. The student portfolio to make clever about stuff may not have anything to do with program evaluations, but it's good for a student. But when they come to the career development or applying for a job, they can showcase their work. But when it comes to program, this is actually make more sense. That we want to look at individual students and see how each student measure up against the student outcome that we want them to achieve. Okay, so that's for the students. Okay, that pretty much cover all the essential things that I'd like to present. The next thing that may be relevant if that is looking to what would be the APEC evaluator supposed to look at. So I mentioned earlier that if you want to create this kind of thing, okay, as the objective evidence become the key information that you want to collect to present when it comes to the visit. And most of the time, it's very time consuming. Because for same objective evidence, you may have to repeat it, copy many copy of it. So you can organize in a way that pertain to only to this particular student outcome 1. So it's possible, can we go green on this thing here? Okay, I'm going to show you that one of my data set, but will not be in this interface, will be the older interface that we have. Now, when the PEV logged into the system, what we did, we give them ahead of time, and these are the login credentials. They can actually review all our data before they come on campus. So look at PEV table. What they have is they can look at our program assessment set up for them and program evaluation, the data we created for them. Now, the key thing is looking to the objective evidence folder. That's what they're more interested in. When it comes to objective evidence folder, they want everything organized according to the student outcome. So with student outcome 1, everything else, let's look at student outcome 1. Even for student outcome 1, we have all this PI. Imagine if you try to organize this manually, it's a nightmare. So what we did here is PI11, all the PI16, then collecting between this term and this term, spring and fall, and then let them know exactly at the evidence level, introductory master level, and these are the corresponding electronic folder for the course. Okay, if you listen, for example, I'm looking into circuit, they pertain to PI12. Now in this circuit folder, so this is actually electronic form of the folder. If not, I will prepare this by hand. So I have 2 assignments, homework 4, homework 7. Why I choose 2 homework assignments? And there are 3 key evidence, average, poor, and good. So the viewer can only click any one of them, they can see exactly what are the quality of the submissions. And these are the problem that are assigned to the students and what quality of problem that are assigned to the student, and this is how to respond to the problem and how to classify it in the average, poor, and good. And so that would be the key evidence that the evaluator would want to see, pertain only to the student outcome, or that only to the PI very specific that they want to look at. Okay, I think that pretty much cover all the essential items that I want to talk about. and show how to automate the entire process. So is automation possible? Yes. Okay, so we pretty much automate the process of data collections. We automate the process of data compilations. We automate the process of roll up data to the top. And even once you're done with your evaluations, how do we automate the process of your response into executive summary, and that's done. And how to generate all the key action item for your self-study report, and that's done. Now, is it possible in the future that all these things are done without even human interventions? In theory, it could, if you deploy artificial intelligence, and there's something that probably need to be explored. If you interested and you come up with something nice, artificial intelligence, can this process be totally artificial intelligence applied, and so it can generate all this report for you? I think it's possible. Okay, at this point, I think I'd like to conclude my presentations. So just open up the floor for any questions.
Dear audience, if you have any question, please feel free. We are watching the chat.
Okay, this PowerPoint, actually, I snapshot some of the key idea for every step, which we walk you through using 2 steps. So I think it'll be available on the InfoOB website. Then later on you can look into it if you wanted to.
Mac, I have one question. That is,
okay.
I think all these assessment numbers, these are coming from direct assessment, I guess. But
mostly from direct assessment, yes.
Yeah, but you did not mention anything about indirect assessment, like surveys and other things. Is it available?
Okay. Okay. Let me. Okay, when it comes to indirect assessment, the way we use it is actually only on the FCAR. Okay, when we look into, let's say, for example, faculty office. I need to time out already. Okay. Let me look at my past courses where I know I have some data uploaded. Okay, so let's say spring 2021. Okay, let me look into second one. And let me look into my FCAR. Okay, this part here is where we focus on the survey data from the students. Okay, so because at one point, the APAC are not really in favor that if you're using indirect data for your report to justify that you are meeting the criteria. But then we do not want to throw away this data. So what we're doing here, we're adding one more section in FCAR. Okay, and saying that we're looking at perception. The reason why they're not in favor, but they believe the student are not mature enough to give you any meaningful input. But our argument is different. We're saying that what happens if you look at entire class response and compare the perception to our faculty. Okay, then if they both match close enough, then you know that whatever response student give for the rest of your survey data, for example, for faculty item, course teaching methodology, those additional things you ask in the survey, it will make sense to generate good data for you. And that's why when we're doing our evaluation for the course, not only looking at the FCAR based on direct assessment data, we also look into, if there's a problem here, we look into this FCAR and say, okay, what is consistent data? Then we go back to the survey. This is where the survey size comes in. Okay, the survey side, this one comes in, you can look in individual data. Let's say, for example, course exit. You can create any survey you want. Okay, so I'm going to look into, let's say, ECE. Okay, then depends on which courses I look at. Let me show you my circuits 2. Okay, then this would be my course informations. Then page 3. Okay, let me page 2. No, it's not. I want view student response. There's no data here. Okay, this one will not make sense. So these are no students. Let me show you one of students. Okay, so this would be the survey data for that particular course. Okay, you can see the respondent, the 14 of them, 12 responded. And in general, how we manage this survey data, we deploy at the beginning of the term, so factor and the cost outcome. So that's why we cost outcome sections. Okay, so at the end of the term, and student will look at this cost outcome, then they respond accordingly. So these are student data. Then the survey also cover into, for example, cost informations and cover the faculty item. Okay, also cover the assessment technique and the overall assessment or any qualitative question that you want to ask the class. Okay, so that's how we get all this data. Now, do we use this data? It depends. If you look at that problem that we try to investigate detail what caused the issue, then we're not only looking at student information, direct assessment data, we're also looking to survey the student perception from a class. Now, you could very well run into one situation where the faculty think the class run really well, but a student think that the class not running very well. You can have that situations. Then in that case, you need to look into whether those data make sense. Okay, you can also run into situation when a student think the class run really well, but faculty says no, it's not really that well. Then you need to look into that situation that makes sense. But in general, if these two data sets are consistent, especially for the cost outcome sections, then the rest of the data make much more sense. And then you can look into it, say what are the comments by students. Okay, the comment will comment out for every section also. Now this cost exit survey will provide a template, but every school has different template. So that's how we can adopt, customize it accordingly. Does it make sense?
Yeah, of course. So there is a question, how feasible, it is from Mehtas Chaudhary, how feasible is this automation system for subjective skill-based subjects like language or creative courses?
Okay, can you repeat that question?
Yeah. How feasible is this automation system for subjective skill-based subjects like language or creative courses?
In fact, it doesn't matter what subject matter. Okay, let's say, for example, this is a language arts class. Now, the key thing is language arts class are taught differently from the engineering courses. By design, they're different. Okay, then language arts class, they may be using different part of the Bloom taxonomy. Okay, so for engineering, we tend to use the cognitive domain, but language may be using different domain. But nonetheless, so for that course, the faculty student design what would be the course outcome. Right, and then when design the cost outcome,
is this automation system for subjects like language or creative courses?
In fact, it doesn't matter what subject matter. Okay, let's say, for example, this is a language arts class. The key thing is language arts class are taught differently from engineering courses.
So Mac, your YouTube is on, I think.
Okay. So as I just said, it doesn't matter what subject matter. The key thing is for that subject matter, they always have to define the course outcome. At the same time, design what will be the course delivery strategy, and they can drive students to learn accordingly. So once you define course outcome and assignment, then the assignment, if you choose to use rubric, if the scoring rubric doesn't make sense, you can always use word rubrics to help them grade the key assignment accordingly. But at the end of it, we convert all the data into the FCAT format where you can look into your program overall. So it doesn't depend on which subject matter. These tools apply to all.
So there is one question from Chaudhary Mukamul. How can we get this software?
Okay, those you can either contact Vazi or contact me, then we can discuss. Okay, in fact, we just signed up one institution from Indonesia. Okay, and then they want to move forward with this methodology. Okay, so certainly you want to get this software, we talk to Vazi or talk to myself, then we can figure out how the best move forward with this software implementations.
And What other tool sets are available and how do they compare with each other?
Okay. Now, in general, I've been doing this for the last 20 years. They are in US alone. I'm not sure for other country. In US alone, you're looking at Blackboard, TaskStream, and the Live Text. Those are three major companies that offer some form of assessment component. But all three of them are focused more into the GI assessment model. EVA2 is the only one that focus on FCAT assessment model. Okay, that's why we are different from the rest of them. Okay, in my personal view, I think FCAT assessment model most likely is the only model it can do full automation later.
There is another question. Can we implement OBE pedagogy without an automated system?
You could. It's just more tedious, that's all. OBE has nothing to do with the tool set. Okay, OBE, it pretty much focus on how do you design backward, using backward design, how to design your course delivery, okay, how do you drive the learning in your class. And then nothing to do with tool set. You can always use any possible Word, Excel, any creative mean of doing it for carry out the OBE. Only thing is when you collect all this data at the end, you need to address one more questions. How do you know, how do you gauge yourself, your teaching itself, actually meeting the target? That's where you need tool set. Now in the FCAR, okay, it was initially designed for the formative evaluation. That means you're looking at your data at the end of the term. It turned out that the FCAR methodology also can do summative evaluations. I mean, the moment you upload your key assignment, score all the key assignment, you have a live data of the result. You can go back to the FCAR and look into it right away and see how you perform. And those additional informations, thus far, I have not seen any other tool can provide this information. FCAR can do that.
Thank you. There is another question that how the attendees can draw their certificate or of joining previous sessions. Yes, thank you for asking. Yeah, we are making some arrangements. Very soon you will be able to download certificates for previous sessions as well. And the soft copy, I think you will find the on-demand video available. So from there you can right away see what are the topics that have been discussed here. And again, I'm saying to you that to generate the certificate, you'll have to go to the previous sessions and click on the button for generating the PD, and you will get the certificate over there. So I think I cannot see any more questions over here. So I think Professor Fong, do you think you are done today?
I'm done. So if no more questions, I want to thank you for all of you to take your precious time out and listen to me to share my experience. Thank you.
And thank you all for being here with us and be proactive in asking questions. So, we will have more sessions, a series of sessions afterwards. And I invite you all to take note of all the future events and join in these sessions. I hope every lecture will be very beneficial for you because we are bringing a lot of eminent experts from around the world. And again, you are all invited to take the opportunity of getting the free pass for joining in for OBE Virtual Summit, and also to take the certificate from Vartec. And afterwards, if you have any more questions or anything to ask, please feel free to put your comments on chat box into the Vartec, and we believe that you will be answered all your queries in due time. Thank you, audience, and thank you, the organizers, and for OB and everyone else, those who have, and of course, especially to Professor Fong Mak, and who has taken so much of time to prepare such a nice presentation and such a nice software as well. It's a very comprehensive software, and thank you. That we hope that we will be benefited more when we want to use this software. So thank you all, and with this, I would like to conclude today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.